Okay then, you lovely lot, I have bought the lovely Match Fishing Magazine cameraman Dave Weston to probably one of my favourite venues in the whole wide world now. We're at Western Pools on the clay pit, and I'm just having an awesome day on the slider. I mean, the slider lends itself to very deep venues, and this is very, very deep. It's like 3,614 foot where I'm fishing. No, it's not really, folks, but it's proper deep. And it's just one of them methods that, you know, it proper takes me back to when I was a lad and fishing with Daddy May. It's a method that doesn't really get fished anymore, unfortunately. Obviously, since the introduction of feeder and this, that and the other, but it's such a good way of catching fish, and, you know, watching that float go, it's fantastic. It's relatively simple to fish with, you know, there's nothing complicated. Obviously, the setup that I'm going to show you in a sec, nothing complicated with it, but there's a few areas where you do need to get right, and if you don't, then it's Tangle City, believe me. So let's start off with the actual rod then. Let's go through it from the start. So rod wise, for this particular kind of slider fishing, ideally you want sort of like a medium waggler. You don't want a light waggler rod, what you'd use for like your traditional waggler fishing on, you know, carp venues or for catching silvers in the winter. For this, because you're going to be chucking out sort of, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 one-shot floats, or like, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 gram floats, and it will take its toll on your gear. So your gear does need to be robust. Now, 13-foot medium float, as I've just said. I've got a large reel. Normally when we're waggler fishing, I like to use small, sort of 2.5, 3,000 at the most size reels. But for this particular kind of fishing, float fishing, you want a 3.5, 4,000. Again, robustness. Main line, minimum of 0.20 on this, folks. Ideally sort of 0.22. Just because, you know, you're casting heavy floats, and, you know, there's a lot of toil going on that line. You don't want to be fishing fine main lines, which you would for the normal traditional waggler, like 0.16. No place whatsoever for that for this. So 0.20, 0.22. Coming up, let's start from the top. Actually, I plumbed this up, and I'll talk you through plumbing up, but I won't show you. It's dead simple, same as you would do a waggler. You just literally putting an SSD shot on your hook, dead simple. So you can see there, folks, we've got the stop knot. Now that is 1, 2, it's like 7 rings down. So basically the rod's 13 foot, and that's like 2 foot down. I'm fishing in 15 foot. That must mean that, mustn't it? Come on, folks, be with me. So this is one of the little areas here on these on the sliding stop knot where anglers go wrong. What they do is leave these tag ends too short. Now what happens when you're casting it, it gets stuck on these finer rod rings at the top. So you want to make sure the minimum of 2 inches. I like to leave them a little bit longer, sort of like 3 inches, just so they're nice and smooth when you're casting through your rod rings. So coming down from the stop knot, obviously that's what the slider float's going to eventually settle onto. We have got the beautiful float. In this case today, we're using a 3 swan shot slider. Kevlar sliders, they're awesome, interchangeable tips. Now on venues like this where the light's horrendous, there's trees all over the place, it's black and white, you do need interchangeable tips. And yeah, as the name suggests, folks, it's sliding up the line. And the beauty of this is obviously you're not striking against a float, where obviously you are with a waggler, a fixed float or waggler, you're striking against it, you do tend to miss a few bites. But with a slider, because you're direct to the fish, you don't really miss them. And obviously the fish are hooking themselves off this big shot here. Now you can use, you know, big olivettes and that, but I just like to use shots. Now the way I've got that tapered, I've got my smallest shot above my bulk of 3 swan shot, so that I'm casting off that shot. That does help to alleviate tangles. You might occasionally get in the odd one, but that's usually due to you not feathering the rig right. So 3 swan shot there with, like, well, it's a trimming shot in this place, but it's like I think it's a BB, either an AB or a BB. And then coming down the line, we've got, coming down to our business end now, a string of 6 or 8 number 8s. You know, it doesn't really matter. And I've just found this way of slider fishing the most effective for not getting in tangles. It is notoriously, you know, one of them methods that you do get in a lot of tangles with. Whereas this way, I perfected it over the years, you don't really get in tangles. So 6 to 8 number 8s, and then one of them up-changey, swivelly, rubber grommet things. I don't even know what they're called. I always forget what they're called. But basically, I can lift that rubber grommet up, and change my hook length in one. Dead simple. Now the beauty of this as well is I've got a nice long hook length. What we're talking there, it's probably 16 inches, something like that, and it's just when the fish take that bait, there's no resistance whatsoever, and you just get them right nice slow bites, and that's the beauty of fishing this way. I'm going to be fishing, well I am fishing sort of 6 inches over depth. The trouble I've got, the clay pit, obviously if people know it, it's shaped like that. It goes down to like whatever depth, and the winds actually blow me float off the banking, but it's not really mattering. You know, I'm getting plenty of bites before it even gets to go off the mountainous shelf, so it's not a problem. Hook wise and you know, hook length don't really matter. In the depth of water that we're fishing in, you can get away with fishing fairly heavy, even though it's proper cold. Well, now we're sort of like getting towards the end of February, it's still proper cold, and I've got a 0.15 main line and I've got a great big 14s hook on. Honestly folks, it doesn't make a blind bit of difference when they're fishing in that depth of water. Yeah, honestly, I can't recommend the method highly enough. It's so good. You've got to get your feeding a bit right, but it's more so with the feathering, which we'll come on to in a bit when we actually start fishing. But yeah, give it a try folks. Where you have that deep water, don't go the feeder, go slider and slide away. I'll sing to you if you want. Slide away and give it all you've got. Yeah! Yes, here we go. So, taking a while for them to turn up, but when they do, honestly folks, it's just the best way of fishing ever. It's lovely. And they always seem to be a bit bigger as well, because they're a little bit further out. It's just awesome. Look at these roaches here. Oh yeah! Awesome. It'll take long to make a weight of them. 4 or 5 ounce roach a chuck. Right, so next thing, which is very, very important, it's probably the most important thing, is the feathering when you're casting. Now what I mean by that is obviously exactly the same as, you know, you would when you're fishing a feeder. You're casting it, bringing the rod back, hits the clip, and then you lower it down. With this, you're not bringing the rod back. I have got the line in a clip, so you just get used to like the same cast every time. Obviously with a waggler, when you're loose feeding perhaps and it's over a bigger area, you're just using your finger to stop the line, to feather it, so your bait's going past your float. With this, I have got it in a clip, as I say, so I'm watching it through the air, but my rod's going to be down low at a slight angle, so when it hits the clip you'll see that rod sort of like coming to. But the most important thing is that you do hit that clip so that your shots go past your float. If you didn't do that, you're getting so many tangles with this folks. So basically, it's rather than a cast where you're really pulling your hand through, your left hand through, or your right hand if you're left-handed like our beautiful cameraman, it's more of a lob. So I'm like lobbing the float, so I'm using my right hand a lot more to lob the float. So let me, if I don't do it proper, I'll bring it back and show you again, but basically I'm sort of pushing it so it's going up high. So basically when that float hits that clip, everything's going past it. Then all it's a case is sinking that rod down low and giving it a nice whack, and then open your bail arm, and it's at this point here you'll know if everything's right or not. You can see the actual line going, and then the float sort of like does this, comes back towards you, and when it hits that stop knot, it just sort of like goes up and then comes down into place. It's just amazing. It will take a bit of getting used to, but it's just one of them things that you have got to do. If you don't do it, you're not going to be fishing right, you're going to be in a tangle. But as I say, it'll tell, the actual slider setup will tell you that, because if you don't see that float coming back towards you wobbling, then you know you're in a tangle. If it settles straight away, then you know it's not right. Let's wait for a fish. We get a fish on as well. Oh, we're going to get one. Yeah, we got a fish as well on that strike. Go on. Non-edited folks, all for you, one motion, you know what I mean? You ain't dealing with no amateurs now. Here we go then. Look at that. Lovely roaches. Let me get that cast on again for you, lovely lot, so I can show you. So you see, rather than me really bring me my left hand through like you would feeder fishing, it's that guide. Because you're on quite a heavy float, it doesn't take much for that float to get to the point where you're fishing kind of thing. So you don't need to give it a lot of force. Double red Maguire on. So again, I didn't talk you through before like the drop. I want a nice big drop, what we're seeing there, 5 foot, something like that. Same as a feeder. I'm going to flick it out slightly first, then it's all in one motion. Come back and I'm pushing more with the right hand. Hits the clip, give a nice tight line, whack it up, open the bail arm, Now it's at this point here, yeah, so you can see that line going through my rod rings, and then you'll see that float. It's up high and it's sort of like coming back towards me. It's sunk now, so we can sink the rest of that line, and then we're in place. And we're fishing. Easy, innit? But as I say, you've got to make sure you are hitting that clip. I mean, again, if I was loose feeding, not putting, I don't know, a little dink then. If I was loose feeding, like I would with a traditional waggler, I wouldn't be using the clip whatsoever, because I'd be casting around it. So you're just stopping it with your finger then. But when you're putting balls of ground bait in, you're lining up at the same mark every time. I've got 3 trees in the distance, and it's all about just getting used to where you have the catapult head. So what I'm doing, I've got them 3 trees in the distance that I'm lining up with, and then the catapult head is on the ridge of the trees up there. So as long as I know, if I bring this pouch back to the same spot every time, to line that catapult head up with on top of them trees, it can't not go on that same spot every time. Again, it's practice, and obviously making your balls up, you'll just get used to making the right size ball up. I'm just using these 3 or 2 fingers and a thumb, just using them just to squeeze the ground bait into it there. Then I know that's roughly the same size every time, within a few grams obviously, but you know, it's little things like that. I could get proper technical. It's been a proper day, folks. I mean, it's rain's going to settle in again in a bit, so I think I'm going to sign off with that. We've had, what have we had? We've had roach on it, it's been main. I've had a nice skimmer, and I've had 2 wobbly carps on it, folks. I've had 2 nice commons on it. It's just been awesome. You know, when you whack into a fish and you think you've like got stuck on something. Well, these things that got stuck, they started moving. I had some carps on the slider. It's been amazing for the time of year. Honestly, give it a go. Rather than fishing feeder, just give a slider a go. You will not be disappointed. And don't let it bother you if you are getting odd tangles. You will get an odd tangle until you perfect it and you go out and keep practicing it. And then it'll just, it's just amazing. Give it a try, folks. I'll stop waffling now.